can send those pictures you get right from the bottom directly ashore via satellite or something like that.
Yeah, sure, we can.
Yes, this is critical. That means that at more or less 1 or 2 or 3 seconds in time, you see exactly the same thing you can see, the pilot of the submarine can see.
Exactly the same picture.
This is great. Great.
To enable the submersible team to recover artifacts on the ocean floor and safely return them to the surface, the Ifremer team utilizes a series of wire cages, which are equipped with transponders to enable the Nautile to locate the basket once it reaches the bottom. First, marker buoys are dropped into position.
C'est assez haut. Vas-y, c'est bon, pas plus haut. Bascule.
Next, the syntactic phone-lined baskets are put overboard and set adrift. They are allowed to free fall through the 2.5-mile distance to the Titanic debris field. Once on the bottom, the basket is moved by the Nautile's articulated arm into position for receiving the artifacts. Here, the Nautile has located a telegraph from the bridge. The telegraph had become separated from its stand, but both are retrieved so they can be reunited back on board the Nadir. Ever so gently, this once key piece of equipment is placed into the retrieval basket. Once the basket is full, ballast holding it down is released by the submersible pilot, and the basket begins its rise. On the surface, the recovery team prepares for the basket's arrival, guided into position by signals from the transponders. As the basket nears, frogmen move into position. Safety lines are attached, and a net is placed over the top of the basket to make sure that small items are not washed out by the swells on the surface. Finally, spring lines are attached to the basket to prevent it from crashing into anything. Weighing over 1,500 pounds, the basket could cause serious injury to crew members, as well as damage the priceless recovered artifacts. The Nautile's work in the debris field was conducted over the course of 32 dives. Its two mechanical arms, manipulated from within the sub, enabled the crew to recover the smallest artifacts, the most delicately crafted treasures, as well as large and cumbersome pieces of nautical equipment. In most instances, the divers were surprised by the amazing condition of what they found.
The condition of most of the artifacts that we found, the silver, the brass, the copper, looked like a scullery maid had just polished it. The only items that seemed to have any deterioration were those of metal, or where metal had touched another substance, such as bronze, such as glass, it would stain it. The little cherub from the first-class staircase was actually touching a bunch of rust, and it's hopefully during the restoration process that can be reversed and the little cherub will be as it was 75 years ago.
One of the most surprising finds in the debris field was this group of over 100 egg plates, still in the same position as when they had been stacked in a crate over 76 years ago. The wooden crate, long ago eaten away by tiny organisms. The plates looked as though they could have been put there yesterday. To retrieve them, a unique suction device has been attached to the Nautile's arm, enabling it to gently lift the plates individually and put them into retrieval baskets. Not one plate was damaged or broken. In Southampton, near the ancient Bar Gate, is the company that originally supplied the china and glassware to the White Star Lines. Stonier's is still in business. Its general manager is John Fox.
There is no doubt in my mind that we would have supplied all the china and glassware on board the Titanic. They're in remarkably good condition. They've obviously been packed in a chest or a crate of some sort, which has rotted away in time. The chef would have used that for cooking egg dishes in the main, I think, or spaghetti dishes. He would have, because of the nature of the dish, he could have put that straight under the grill. This is interesting. This is a teapot. It's a rather ornate teapot, as we can see from the lid there. And it's a little difficult to say exactly what that's made of, whether it's earthenware or china. If it's earthenware, it would tend to be used in one of the lower class restaurants. If it was in the first class restaurant, then it would be bone china. I'm surprised that there's no marine incrustation at all, but they look as good as the day they were put on the ship.
One of the most sought-after items of the expedition was this assistant purser's safe in the debris field. Bulky and difficult to move, the safe presented the Nautile's pilots with an extraordinary challenge. To retrieve it, the sub-team utilized a lariat. They roped the safe and lifted it into a basket. It was certainly the heaviest item to be recovered, weighing well over 100 pounds, and it was also quite possibly one of the most valuable. It was a painstakingly slow, tedious process. When the basket reached the surface, word of its recovery had spread throughout the ship. Most of the crew gathered on board to take a look at this extraordinary find. To protect it from the atmosphere, the safe was wrapped and immediately stored in fresh water. Captain Yvonne Roark reveals the manufacturer's medallion.
This is the plaque which was fitted on the safe just recovered. As you can see, it comes from Thomas Perry & Sons Limited, Belson.
In the debris field adjacent to the crumpled stern section of the ship, the divers made one of many very significant discoveries. What was found was a collection of some of the most vital equipment from the Titanic's stern bridge. Now, we are on the bridge of the Queen Mary to try and give you some idea of what this equipment looks like when it's in its proper perspective. For example, this is a binnacle, which simply means the stand and the housing which holds the ship's compass. Obviously, it's a very important piece of equipment. The Nautile recovered the binnacle from the Titanic stern bridge. This is known as the helm. It holds the steering wheel and the steering gear, which in turn turns the rudder. The Nautile did recover one of the steering gears from the Titanic stern bridge, and this is a telegraph. This is the device which the officers on the bridge use to communicate their commands to the engine room. They signal, and the engine room then issues a response when that action has been taken. What is particularly interesting is that of the 3 telegraphs recovered by the Nautilus from the Titanic stern bridge, all of them were in the dead stop position, yet the engine room response indicated the ship was still going slow ahead. Now, what that means is open to a lot of conjecture, but it could indicate that there was no one left in the engine room to respond. While most of the stern section is now nothing more than twisted and decaying metal, it is astounding that the equipment from the stern docking bridge has survived in surprisingly good condition. These pieces are indeed the best nautical treasures retrieved from the wreck.
A deck light made out of solid brass. Still see the inside. Glass is a little cracked, perfect condition. This is the binnacle which held the compass on the stern of the Titanic. Got it? Pressure broke through. What we have here is the stern rudder indicator. We have port, starboard. This indicates where the rudder is, and this is where the ship's wheel was attached. This would be what controlled the rudder. You can see the force of the sea is sheared off this piece of metal. Also, it has sheared all the bolts that mounted it to the wing or to the stern bridge of the Titanic. But it survived in one piece. We now have the complete stern bridge.
A dramatic night dive and recovery of the Nautilus comes to symbolize the 1987 Titanic expedition. This dangerous outing succeeds because of the careful teamwork and special talents of the crew members assembled for the mission. The friendship and camaraderie that have developed among the French and American scientists and engineers in the course of the 2-month expedition were cause enough for celebration. But there were other accomplishments well worth toasting. 36 dives to the wreck of the Titanic, each conducted safely and without major incident. And most important, over 900 significant artifacts were recovered from the ocean floor. What is there about the Titanic that gives her such charisma and mystique? That's a really good question, especially considering her short career, just 5 days. Nevertheless, she remains the most talked about and written about ship of all time. Even now that she has been found, there is an incessant fascination with her story and an ever-increasing demand for objects with a direct connection to the Titanic. In just the past few months, there have been 2 major auctions of Titanic memorabilia, one in London, the other in New York. They attracted Titanic buffs and collectors from all over the world. This one in London was staged on April 15th, the 76th anniversary of the ship's sinking.
We all done at 200 for the chamber pot, 210, 220, 230. At 230, I shall sell it at 230. Are we all 240?
While most items that become available at public auctions are known to collectors, this year's Titanic auction produced a number of new items not known to exist before. This included many private letters and postcards which had long been held by family members and put up for sale for the first time this year. While postcards have become particularly hot items on the collectible market, the record belongs to this Titanic postcard, which was written on the ship and mailed before she departed Queenstown, Ireland for New York. The card, dated April 11th, 1912, and bearing the Queenstown postmark, was sold at last year's Titanic auction for the world record price of £2,000, then the equivalent of $3,900. The postcard was purchased by the Ulster Folk and Transport Museum, located just outside of